Iran, formerly known as Persia, is a captivating country with a deep-rooted history. It has stood as a major force since ancient times, before Rome's inception, and even since the earliest stages of human civilization, and continues to play a critical role in shaping modern Middle Eastern and Eurasian geopolitics. Positioned strategically between Asia and Europe, it has long served as a vital hub for commerce, education, and the exchange of cultures. It has consistently remained a formidable seat of power, reviving itself time and again despite numerous invasions and conquests. This documentary will explore the origins of Persia and uncover the factors that contributed to its remarkable success and distinctive place among the world's civilizations. The territory now recognized as Iran, once historic Persia, has been home to human populations since the dawn of prehistory. Around 7200 BC, early agricultural villages, such as Chogar Golan and Chogar Bonut, emerged in the Zagros Mountains, along modern Iran's western border. Archaeological evidence from these sites shows cultivation of wild barley, lentils, and legumes, as well as the discovery of a 7,000-year-old wine jar, now housed at the University of Pennsylvania. Persian culture developed closely alongside Mesopotamian civilization in modern-day Iraq. One of the earliest Mesopotamian cities, Uruk, is believed to have expanded eastward, giving rise to the city of Susa by 4395 BC or earlier. Susa eventually became the capital of Elam, the first recorded state that would evolve into Persia. This city remained a commercial and administrative hub for nearly 5,500 years until the Mongol invasion. Elam was likely not a unified nation in the modern sense, but a federation of tribes residing in the highlands. The Mesopotamians referred to them as Elamites, though they may have called themselves Halami, meaning highlanders. This identity as mountain dwellers would distinguish them from their neighbors in the flatlands of Iraq. The mountainous geography limited irrigation-based agriculture, favoring a semi-nomadic lifestyle centered around livestock and modest farming in valleys. This terrain produced a tougher, more resilient population compared to the more numerous and agriculturally rich societies of the plains. In a sense, the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s was the latest chapter in a 6,000-year rivalry between these two regions and their peoples. We know little about Elamite daily life due to the ongoing difficulty in translating their language, which dates back to 3200 BC. The Elamite tongue was a linguistic isolate, unrelated to other known languages of the area. However, recent advances in decipherment may soon yield more insights. Unique to Elamite culture was their artistic emphasis on animals, especially dogs and bulls, setting them apart from Sumerians, Akkadians, and Egyptians, who preferred human and hybrid figures. Their religion was nature-centered and polytheistic, venerating a mother goddess and often conducting rituals in sacred groves or mountains. This inclusive religion gradually assimilated neighboring deities, and likely influenced Zoroastrianism, particularly through its use of elevated worship sites and personified natural forces. Elamite society also displayed a high regard for women, who were portrayed as equals to men in art. Queens were depicted alongside kings, a tradition that later persisted in Persian society. Elam faced frequent invasions by more populous neighbors from the plains, who benefited from advanced irrigation. In fact, history records the first war ever around 2700 BC, when the Sumerians raided Elam. Susa came under Sumerian control, under the legendary Sargon of Akkad. However, Elam regained prominence by 1100 BC, when King Shutruk Nakhunte launched a series of military campaigns, subjugating cities around Babylon. Later, Elam weakened due to internal strife, eventually falling to Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar around 1120 BC, highlighting how power in the region constantly shifted. Trade evidence from Susa suggests Elam engaged not just with neighboring cultures, but with distant civilizations, including the Indus Valley, modern Pakistan, eastern Iran, and Afghanistan. This established a network of commerce involving sea and land routes. Afghanistan supplied tin, critical for making bronze, indicating Elam may have served as a middleman between the East and Mesopotamia or even Egypt. They also exported wood, stone, and metal resources scarce in desert regions crisscrossed by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These routes evolved into what would become the Silk Road, linking Europe and Asia with Persia as the central conduit. Eventually, Elamite dominance gave way to Iranian tribes migrating from the Eurasian steppes. These nomads, culturally akin to early Slavs, Turks, and Mongols, gradually merged with the Elamites, particularly in the south, over centuries beginning around 2000 BC. Despite this shift, Elamite culture endured. Their language remained in administrative use long after Iranian tribes gained political control, indicating continuity in governance. Among these Iranian groups, the Medes began uniting the region under a leader named Deioces, who reigned from 727 to 675 BC. Herodotus, though not always reliable, described him as the first true Iranian monarch. The Mede Federation likely arose in resistance to Assyrian domination. Deioces' grandson, Cyaxares, later allied with the Babylonians to destroy the Assyrian capital of Nineveh in 612 BC. By 700 BC, Iranians such as the Medes, Persians, and Parthians had become the region's primary inhabitants. While the Medes laid the groundwork for the first Iranian empire, the Persians under Cyrus the Great would take the mantle. Originally a vassal to the Medes, Cyrus rebelled in 553 BC and launched an astonishing campaign of conquest. By 539 BC, Cyrus had taken Babylon, and by 533 BC, parts of India. His early life remains mysterious, though it's believed that a Median general, Haragas, defected to Cyrus, helping him overthrow the Medes. Their alliance's origins remain speculative due to the myth-laden nature of sources like Herodotus, yet Haragas later served as one of Cyrus's top commanders. Cyrus's legacy rests on several key achievements. First, he unified the Iranian people under an organized, centralized administration led by satraps, regional governors, who were supervised by a royal network of informants known as the King's Eyes. The empire had 4 capitals, emphasizing regional autonomy, but Susa remained the administrative heart. Cyrus instituted a courier system, with regular stations providing fresh horses, food, and rest for messengers, a structure preserved for centuries until Islamic rule. His administrative and legal innovations reportedly inspired thinkers like Thomas Jefferson, who studied Xenophon's biography of Cyrus while drafting the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Second, in 539 BC, Cyrus liberated the Jewish people from Babylonian captivity, a role described in the Hebrew Bible as divinely appointed. He remains the only non-Jewish figure in the Bible referred to as a Messiah. Third, he was widely respected for honoring the religions and cultures of those he conquered. While Iranians consider him the founding father of their nation, the Babylonians called him a liberator, reflecting his diplomatic leadership style. Fourth, Cyrus created the elite military unit known as the Immortals, a 10,000-strong force that would become the empire's backbone for centuries. He established the largest empire in history at the time, achieving this with comparatively little destruction and sparing civilians and sacred sites. His son, Cambyses II, extended the empire further by conquering Phoenicia, Cyprus, Egypt, Nubia, and parts of Syria by 525 BC. The Persian Empire reached its greatest territorial extent under Cyrus and Cambyses, and the tomb of Cyrus still stands as a UNESCO heritage site in Iran. Darius I followed and pushed Persia's borders into the Indus Valley, present-day Pakistan. He is perhaps best remembered for initiating the first Persian invasion of Greece in 492 BC, which failed due to a storm-wrecked fleet and under-resourced campaign. His death in 486 BC. Xerxes, though initially successful, he burned a deserted Athens in 480 BC, faltered in the face of Greek unity. At Salamis, the Greeks destroyed the Persian fleet, and by 479 BC, Persian ground forces were defeated at Plataea. Xerxes was assassinated in 465 BC, but Persia remained a dominant force for centuries. One notable achievement of the empire was water management. Darius developed the Shushtar hydraulic system, redirecting river water to power mills, create waterfalls, and irrigate 100,000 acres of farmland. The qanats, subterranean canals, were another innovation that limited water loss and protected the supply from warfare and weather. Building qanats required precision to ensure gentle slopes and minimal erosion. Their vertical shafts, used for access and maintenance, became iconic elements of the landscape. Persians also pioneered refrigeration techniques like the Yakhtal clay domes for ice storage. They contributed to culture with innovations like the tar, Qajar concester, backgammon, the oldest known board game, and possibly chess, though India also claims its origin. While slavery existed in Egypt and Babylon under Persian control, it was less central than in Greece or Rome. Persian women enjoyed substantial rights for the era. They could own property, run businesses, travel freely, and even engage in archery and horseback riding. They were excluded only from ruling. Zoroastrianism, one of the first monotheistic faiths, emerged from Persian tradition. Attributed to Zoroaster, possibly 6th or 10th century BC, the religion portrayed life as a battle between a good god and an evil one. It introduced ideas like free will, heaven and hell, and moral dualism, influencing Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Greek philosophy. The Magi, mentioned in the Bible as the wise men visiting Jesus, were Zoroastrian priests. Zoroastrian worship included fire and flowing water and emphasized truth, Asha, which inspired Cyrus's governance, though he didn't impose the religion on others. To this day, Zoroastrianism survives in small communities in Iran and India. The Persian Empire, while autocratic, offered justice, stability, and tolerance, aiming to uplift ordinary citizens through efficient administration and cultural respect. Persia's brilliance is evident in its innovations, ethical governance, and enduring legacy. Cyrus and Darius's empire would eventually fall, but only to another extraordinary figure, Alexander the Great. Alexander admired Cyrus, reportedly studying his life through Xenophon's works. Born in 356 BC, Alexander, son of Philip II of Macedon, was taught by Aristotle. He ruled at 20 and quickly proved his ruthlessness, executing rivals and annihilating Thebes in 335 BC to suppress revolt. Yet, he showed mercy to individual survivors. In 334 BC, Alexander invaded Persia with 50,000 men, including 6,000 cavalry and 38,000 infantry. He seized western Anatolia, then Syria and the Levant. At the Battle of Issus in 333 BC, outnumbered Greeks confronted Darius III, whose poor tactics and retreat caused Persian collapse and unprecedented defeat. Darius fled, leaving behind his family and royal regalia. The treatment of his captured relatives would later highlight Alexander's magnanimity. Although Alexander refused to surrender his captives unless Darius recognized him as the Persian emperor, he later married one of Darius's daughters to solidify his claim to the throne. To punish Phoenician Tyre, now in Lebanon, for resisting him, Alexander laid siege to the city, destroyed it in 332 BC, executed the men, and sold the women and children into slavery. Gaza resisted as well, and Alexander was seriously wounded in the shoulder during the conflict. Gaza faced the same brutal outcome as Tyre. Egypt submitted without a fight, and Alexander founded several cities named Alexandria, the most notable being Egyptian Alexandria, founded in 331 BC, which became a thriving center of trade and scholarship, home to the Great Library and Lighthouse. 2 years after Issus, Darius once again retreated at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC. Despite having superior numbers, favorable ground, and skilled commanders, he fled prematurely before the outcome was determined, and the Persian Empire never recovered. Darius failed to raise a third army, likely due to the fate of the previous two, and Alexander's brutal response to resistance, making surrender a more appealing choice. Alexander's tactical brilliance played a key role in maintaining dominance since he was 16, demonstrating both harshness and diplomacy in his campaigns. Part of his rapid success can be attributed to Darius's cowardice. Twice he led retreats that demoralized his much larger forces, while Alexander defied his general's advice, leading from the front. This courage made his troops fight not for Macedon, which many disliked, but for Alexander himself. In contrast, Persian soldiers, seeing Darius flee, lacked motivation to risk their lives for a cowardly ruler. While some historians argue Persia's fall was inevitable due to internal weakness, that's debatable. Persia twice gathered armies twice the size of Alexander's and hadn't suffered significant rebellions or defections. It remained a well-run empire, but the clash between Alexander, a rare military prodigy, and Darius, an ineffective leader, brought about its fall. With Greece and Macedon united under his rule, Alexander formed the largest empire ever. In 330 BC, after plundering Persepolis for days, a fire, possibly revenge for Xerxes' burning of Athens, destroyed much of the city. Whether accidental or deliberate, Alexander regretted it too late. Greek-Persian relations were marked by both animosity and respect. According to Plutarch, Alexander paused at a statue of Xerxes, asking whether to leave it toppled or restore it, out of respect for Xerxes' virtues. Alexander then pursued Darius's successors across Central Asia, now Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan, before turning to India in 326 BC. Initial victories gave way to discontent. His weary soldiers refused to continue. Though still loyal, they wanted no further conquests. Returning to Susa in 324 BC, Alexander aimed to solidify his image as Persian ruler, causing tension with Greek troops. One dramatic moment came when he killed a friend in a drunken rage after being accused of adopting Eastern habits. Integrating Greek veterans with Persian officers included joint command and mass marriages between officers and Persian nobility. Still, these unions had little lasting impact. Alexander began reforming the administration, executing disloyal satraps. He died unexpectedly in 323 BC, likely from fever, though theories of poisoning persist. Ironically, such a powerful conqueror may have fallen to a common illness. He was buried in Alexandria, but the final fate of his remains remains uncertain after the 2nd century AD. His death fractured the empire into 4 regions: Greece and Macedon in the west, Anatolia and Persia with Central Asia, and Egypt, which also controlled the Levant and Cyprus. These successor states remained under Greek rule or influence for centuries in what became the Hellenistic period. For most people, life changed little. Mainly the aristocracy adopted Greek or mixed cultures. The Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt, founded by General Ptolemy, lasted until Roman times, blending Greek and local traditions. Cleopatra, Julius Caesar's lover, was its last ruler, dying in 30 BC. This Hellenistic world extended far east, with the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, the last to preserve Alexander's cultural legacy. The Seleucid Empire, formed by Alexander's general Seleucus, struggled to hold lands west of the Indus, using it as a boundary with the Mauryan Empire. Attempts to expand west into Greece failed against Roman-allied Greeks, weakening the Seleucids and leaving them open to Parthian conquest. The empire's decline was hastened by Greek immigration, rebellion, including Jewish uprisings, and internal strife. Greek remained the language of education and trade. Even the Bible's first translation was into Greek, which became widely used across the Near East. In Iran, Greek influence faded slowly, and Iranian and Zoroastrian ideas re-emerged. The last Hellenic state, Greco-Bactria, blended Greek and Buddhist culture, Greco-Buddhism. From here, Buddhism reached China. Parthians, a nomadic group from today's Turkmenistan, initially ruled by Greek satraps, eventually rebelled and took over. Mithridates defeated the Greco-Bactrians and expanded west, clashing with Rome. The Parthians, famed for mounted archers and the Parthian shot, firing backwards on horseback, defeated Roman leader Crassus in 53 BC and executed him by pouring molten gold down his throat as punishment for his greed. The Sassanid Empire replaced the Parthians and marked the last pre-Islamic Persian dynasty. Its founders came from the same region as Cyrus the Great. Starting in 224 AD, they reasserted Iranian culture and made Zoroastrianism the state religion. Greek influence remained only on the fringes, while the core returned to Persian traditions. Although other faiths were tolerated, the empire differed from Christian Byzantium. The Sassanids rivaled Rome fiercely. They saw the composition of the Babylonian Talmud and the rise of Manichaeism, a religion that fused teachings of Zoroaster, Buddha, and Jesus. It spread widely before suppression by various states. The Sassanids were more centralized and urbanized than the Parthians. They developed deep ties with India and China through the Silk Road, which predated them but flourished under their control. They expelled Romans from Indian Ocean trade and exchanged artists with China. Their culture influenced Muslim civilization so thoroughly that foreigners often mistook Sassanid contributions as Islamic. Some believe they invented the Baghdad battery, a ceramic jar with a metal element capable of generating power, though its purpose is unclear. As Muhammad preached Islam, the Byzantines and Sassanids had exhausted each other in prolonged war. A plague also struck in 627 BC. Turkish invasions weakened Sassanid forces further. After King Khosrow II was murdered, a civil war broke out, with up to 10 rivals claiming the throne between 628 and 632 AD. Once the war ended, Arab Muslims attacked. Though initially repelled, they succeeded in 636 and conquered all land west of Iran by 642 AD. Persian rebellions were crushed, sacred Zoroastrian texts burned, and conversions forced. Many Zoroastrians fled, especially to India, where their descendants live today. Non-Muslims paid the jizya tax and risked enslavement. Islam took centuries to dominate Iran. Meanwhile, Arab Muslims nearly defeated Byzantium. The Rashidun Caliphate took over Persia, Egypt, Syria, and parts of Central Asia. Persia's relationship with Islam is layered. It was imposed but also influenced Islam profoundly, especially among Turks, who later founded the Ottoman Empire. Islam changed Persia, but didn't erase its culture, just as Elamite, Greek, or Parthian conquests hadn't. The Umayyad Caliphate, which succeeded the Rashidun, blended Persian and Arab elements, using Persian administration and customs. At its peak, in 750 AD, it stretched from Central Asia to Spain. Smaller and more manageable empires emerged, partly due to disputes over who should follow Muhammad as leader. Given that Muhammad's rule had a religious foundation, this disagreement eventually turned into a major religious division. Shia Muslims maintained that Muhammad selected his cousin Ali as his successor. In contrast, Sunni Muslims argued that he did not, and believed that Abu Bakr chosen by senior Muslim leaders, was the legitimate heir. This created a deep conflict that still persists today. Over time, this initial political disagreement expanded into theological and cultural divergences. Shia Islam first thrived mainly in Egypt and North Africa, but today Iran stands as the principal Shia nation, frequently at odds with the predominantly Sunni Muslim world. The Umayyad Caliphate was eventually succeeded by the Abbasid Caliphate, which rose with the support of a Persian general. This new leadership would gradually blend Persian traditions and governance into Arab rule and Islamic belief. The Abbasids founded Baghdad in 762 AD near the ancient city of Babylon. It became a prominent hub of learning and innovation in the Islamic world and hosted the first paper mill in the region, utilizing technology derived from China. Baghdad became renowned for preserving and studying classical knowledge, including Greek, Roman, and Persian texts. The Abbasids also traded globally, facilitating the spread of Asian innovations like the astrolabe, zero, and gunpowder into the West. Nonetheless, the Abbasid Empire struggled to manage its vast territory, gradually losing distant provinces, Morocco in the 830s, Egypt in the 870s, and North Africa by the 920s. From 945 onward, the Seljuk Turks, originating from the Eurasian steppes, began to dominate, replacing the waning Abbasid authority, echoing earlier patterns of nomadic takeover. Though the Abbasid caliphs remained in title, real power shifted to the Seljuks, who controlled the military, while Persian officials handled the administration. The Abbasid Caliphate is often viewed as the driving force behind the Islamic Golden Age, a flourishing period of scientific, cultural, and intellectual growth. This era built upon knowledge from earlier civilizations, Egyptian, Greek, Persian, and Roman, while benefiting from cultural exchanges across Eurasia, from Europe to India and China. Advances were made in medicine, astronomy, chemistry, mathematics, algebra. Many achievements came from minorities like Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians, who, though barred from politics, served as scholars, physicians, and engineers. The Abbasids also contributed to Islamic literature, producing works like the 1001 Nights, initially Arabic translations of Persian stories with Indian roots, later enriched by folklore from Arab, Egyptian, Persian, and Mesopotamian cultures. Famous characters such as Aladdin, Sinbad, and Ali Baba have their origins in these tales. Despite Seljuk dominance, the day-to-day functions of the Abbasid regime remained largely unchanged. The pattern of nomadic tribes supplanting dynasties ended with the Mongol invasions. Unlike past nomadic conquests, the Mongols brought immense destruction, including the catastrophic sack of Baghdad in 1258. Numerous cities were destroyed and civilians slaughtered. Libraries, mosques, and intellectual centers were reduced to ash, marking the end of the Islamic Golden Age. Another grim aspect of the Mongol invasions was the destruction of qanats, complex irrigation systems essential for sustaining agriculture. The resulting environmental damage rendered large areas uninhabitable. Partial recovery began under the Mongol Ilkhanate, which restored trade and infrastructure. Over time, most Mongols in Persia adopted Islam, especially Sufism, which resonated with their earlier animist and Buddhist traditions. Just as Persia began to rebound, two devastating events struck. The first was the Black Death in 1349, wiping out nearly 30% of the population. The second was the brutal conquest by Timur, Tamerlane, starting in 1381. Timur, a fierce nomadic warlord, earned his name from injuries sustained in youth and followed a strategy of demanding unconditional surrender. Those who resisted faced mass killings or enslavement, including civilians. His campaigns are believed to have caused up to 17 million deaths, about 5% of the global population at the time. Paradoxically, Timur was also a major patron of the arts, especially architecture and poetry. His empire, though built on destruction, was short-lived, collapsing within a century. By 1452 AD, Persia had fragmented under various Turkic nomadic rulers, such as the Black Sheep, Kara Koyunlu, and White Sheep, Ak Koyunlu. Turkmen, the chaos from successive invasions, broke Persia's unity for the first time in centuries. This disorder gave rise to new religious movements seeking to restore order, many of which were Shia. The rise of Shia dominance in Iran can be traced back to this period. One such leader was Shah Ismail, a noble of mixed ancestry, Turkoman, Georgian, Greek, and Kurdish, making him a fitting figure for a land molded by many cultures. The newly formed Shia Islam in Iran absorbed Sufi practices, deepening its divergence from Sunni Islam. Between 1501 and 1511, Shah Ismail re-established a Persian state with familiar borders including Iran, parts of Afghanistan, the Caucasus, and some Mesopotamian areas. The main rival of the Safavid Empire was the Ottoman Empire to the west. While Iran faced nomadic invasions, the Turks had created a vast empire in Anatolia and conquered Constantinople. The Ottomans also controlled Egypt, the Balkans, and extended into North Africa and Ukraine, even reaching Vienna. Alongside the Mughals and Safavids, they formed the Mughals and Safavids, whose military might and expansion were powered by early mastery of gunpowder. The Safavid state was meritocratic. Roles could be inherited, but only by proving competence. While relations with the Mughals were amicable due to geographic barriers, the Ottomans and Safavids frequently clashed over Mesopotamia and eastern Anatolia. This enmity encouraged alliances between Safavids and European powers, like Austria and England. Shah Abbas I recaptured Georgia, Baghdad, and eastern Anatolia by 1618, thanks to military modernization inspired by British methods under Sir Robert Shirley. The British also helped the Safavids expel the Portuguese from Bahrain and Hormuz. Persian exports like silk and carpets were highly prized in Europe, and living conditions for ordinary people were comparable to those in Europe. Still, European visitors often criticized the underutilization of fertile land, blaming mismanagement and elite disinterest in agriculture. Many surviving architectural wonders in Iran, especially in Isfahan, date to the Safavid period. Isfahan flourished as a center of scholarship, but by the mid-1600s, Islamic culture began to stagnate. Reverence for classical knowledge led to an aversion to innovation, putting Persia behind an increasingly scientific Europe. Later Safavid rulers lacked the competence of Abbasist, showing more interest in pleasures than governance. This emboldened rivals, especially Russia, which had expanded for over 200 years and took over Persian territories in the Caucasus by 1723. Afghanistan and Pakistan also broke away, and the Ottomans seized parts of western Iran. The Treaty of Constantinople in 1724 briefly divided Iran between Russia and the Ottomans. Most of this territory was regained in 1735 thanks to Nader Shah, who later looted Delhi to fund further conquests. Though successful militarily, Nader became a paranoid tyrant and was assassinated in 1747. At his death, Persia had regained much of its former domain. Following this, civil wars ensued. Eventually, Agha Muhammad Khan established the Qajar dynasty in 1796, aiming to reclaim the Caucasus. Like many nations then, Iran struggled against powerful colonial empires. Despite Russia fighting Napoleon, it defeated Iran in two wars, 1804 to 1813 and 1826 to 1828, permanently seizing the Caucasus. Many Muslims from the region moved to Iran to avoid Russian Orthodox rule. Later, Iran's ruling elites began manipulating foreign powers, mainly Russia and Britain, for their own benefit. The discovery of oil in 1908 brought more corruption than development. British and Russian interference peaked with the 1907 Anglo-Masinko Convention, which divided Iran into zones of influence. Iran's autonomy diminished as foreign powers backed various factions vying for control. In 1921, Reza Khan, supported by the British, seized power, founding the Pahlavi dynasty. His government was secular, nationalist and militaristic, modernizing Iran rapidly. Yet, it was also corrupt and authoritarian. His westernization agenda of changing clothing, promoting women's rights, and introducing reforms was rejected by conservative Muslims. During WHI, Iran considered siding with Nazi Germany. In response, the UK and USSR invaded, turning Iran into a key supply route to the Soviet Union under the Lend-Lease program. Post-war instability followed. Initially, the Shah and Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh attempted a constitutional monarchy. However, tensions escalated when Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil. After a temporary ousting and public support, he was ultimately removed in a UK-US coup in 1953. From 1953 to 1973, foreign companies controlled Iran's oil. The Shah regained control in 1973 during the oil crisis, using the wealth to modernize and build up the military. However, in 1979, the Islamic Revolution toppled the monarchy, creating the Islamic Republic. Communist groups who aided the revolution were soon purged, straining ties with the USSR. Iran cut all ties with the West, with the 1979 hostage crisis marking a turning point. In 1980, Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, hoping to take advantage of the chaos and seize oil-rich territory. He was backed by multiple powers, including the USA, USSR, and neighboring Arab nations. Today, Iran faces Western sanctions over its nuclear program, but maintains influence in the region, especially in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, while strengthening ties with China and Russia through groups like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Iran, once the Persian Empire, remains one of history's most powerful civilizations, contributing profoundly to global progress in culture, science, and governance across millennia.